Winter came down that night the way a memory does, quietly at first, then all at once, until the streets were buried in white, and every sound felt borrowed. I remember the snow most of all. How it softened the sirens. How it made even anger seem hushed, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Officer Clara Boone stood beneath a flickering street lamp, one glove lost somewhere between duty and disbelief. The cold gnawed at her fingers, but she didn't move. At her side sat Ash, her canine partner, his dark coat dusted with snow, his body angled slightly toward her as if he could shield her from the night itself. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He only watched, amber eyes alert, faithful, unblinking. Dogs know when something sacred has been cracked. The patrol car idled longer than it needed to, exhaust curling into the cold, like an apology no one intended to voice. When it finally pulled away, the street felt emptier than before. Clara exhaled, a thin sound swallowed by Winter. She had been trained for chaos, for sharp commands and sudden danger, but nothing prepared her for the quiet after, when the world pretends nothing happened and expects you to do the same. It had begun with a voice slurred by arrogance, a laugh sharpened into a blade. Luca Moretti wore entitlement like a second skin, stitched into him by a family name the town feared too much to challenge. He hadn't needed to strike hard. A shove was enough. Words, though, landed heavier, reminders of power, of who belonged and who did not. Clara had reached for calm the way she always did, grounding herself in procedure, in breath. Ash had sensed the shift before she did, muscles tightening, loyalty coiled and ready. When Luca spat near her boots and leaned too close, Ash stepped forward, not in rage but in warning. That was all it took. The moment twisted. The air thickened. Someone shouted. Someone else turned away. By the time help arrived, the truth was already beginning to fracture into versions easier to swallow. In the days that followed, the town spoke in murmurs. Whispers slid across diner tables and down grocery aisles. They said she'd escalated it. They said dogs made things worse. They said she should have known better than to challenge a Moretti. Clara heard these things without hearing them, the way you hear rain against a roof while pretending it isn't leaking. Her captain avoided her eyes. Desk duty was suggested gently, like a favor. Ash was sidelined for review. His vest hung on a hook like an accusation. Walking home alone that first evening felt like learning a new gravity. Snow creaked beneath her boots. Windows glowed warm and distant. Ash stayed close, pressing his shoulder into her knee, as if to remind her she still occupied space in the world. She rested her hand on his head, fingers sinking into familiar fur, and felt something steady beneath the ache. That was when she noticed the man across the street. He stood half in shadow, coat worn thin at the elbows, breath slow and measured. He wasn't watching her the way others did, not with curiosity or judgment, but with attention, as if he were reading the night itself, and she happened to be part of the text. Ash noticed him too. Instead of bristling, he stilled, ears lifting, tail low but calm. Trust, offered without demand. Their paths crossed again the next morning near the edge of town, where snow gathered untouched and the woods began. The man knelt to Ash's level without asking, his movements unhurried, respectful. He let Ash close the distance. He let the dog decide. Clara watched, wary but tired of suspicion. When Ash leaned forward and sniffed the man's glove, then sat, satisfied, something inside her loosened. "Coffee's hot," the man said, holding out a cup like an afterthought. His voice was quiet, weathered by distance. "Cold day." She took it because refusing felt heavier than accepting. They stood there, steam rising between them, no introductions pressed into place. Silence stretched, not awkward but deliberate, like a bridge still being built. He noticed the frayed strap on Ash's vest before she did. Without comment, he adjusted it, fingers deft, careful not to startle. Clara saw the way his hands moved, precise, practiced, as if muscle memory guided them. He finished, nodded once, and stepped back. No praise. No questions. They walked together for a while after that, not side by side, but near enough to share the same air. Clara found herself speaking when she hadn't planned to, about the cold, about the way snow erased footprints by morning. He listened without interruption, the kind of listening that makes room instead of filling it. When they parted, he said only, "Name's Elias." Then he was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and pine. The town grew smaller as winter deepened. Clara felt eyes on her everywhere, weighing her worth, rewriting her story. Ash sensed her tension and responded with patience, offering his presence like a vow. At night, she dreamed of sirens buried under snow, of voices calling her name and then forgetting it. Elias appeared when the quiet felt heaviest. Sometimes he brought tools and fixed what was broken without announcing it. Sometimes he walked with them to the edge of the woods and stopped there, as if respecting a boundary only he could see. He never asked about the incident, never offered advice. He spoke once, briefly, of leaving things behind because staying had cost too much. Clara understood without needing more. Rumors began to coil again, darker this time. Luca's name surfaced with laughter that didn't reach the eyes. Ash grew restless, pacing the house at night, ears twitching toward sounds Clara could not hear. Elias watched the horizon when they crossed paths, posture alert in a way that felt earned. Snow fell thicker, muting the world, sharpening the sense that something unresolved was drawing closer. On the last evening before the storm worsened, Clara stood at her window, watching flakes spiral beneath the street lamp. Ash pressed against her calf, solid and warm. Somewhere beyond the white, a choice waited, one that would not be postponed by weather or fear. She didn't know what it would cost, only that she would not face it alone. The cold settled deeper with dawn, turning breath to mist and the world to glass. Clara tightened the collar around Ash's neck, feeling the familiar weight of his steady presence. Her hands no longer trembled as they had days before. Outside, the town lay quiet beneath its blanket of white, but beneath that silence, something taut and restless stirred. She stepped out, boots crunching on frozen gravel, Ash at her side like a shadow molded in fur. The sky was a hard gray, the sun still hidden, as if reluctant to witness what would come. Clara's thoughts drifted, tangled with the memory of Luca Moretti's eyes, sharp and calculating, untouched by consequence. He was a ghost in the snow, an echo of power wielded without honor. The diner's faded sign swung softly in the wind, its warmth visible through frost-lined windows. She paused on the threshold, sensing a presence before turning. Luca stood just beyond the porch, his silhouette rigid, hands clenched like winter branches stripped bare. There was no need for words. Threats lived in the spaces between them. Ash stepped forward, a low rumble rising in his throat. Not fury, but protective certainty. Clara's breath caught. She reached for the leash, but did not pull. Ash's stance was deliberate, a silent declaration that the line had been drawn. Luca took a step closer, eyes narrowing, the menace beneath his calm undeniable. From across the street, a figure emerged, Elias Crow. His coat hung loose over a steady frame, eyes sharp beneath a fur-lined hood. He moved without haste, but there was no mistaking the readiness coiled beneath his calm exterior. As he crossed the street, the world seemed to slow, each step measured like a heartbeat in a quiet song. Luca's lip curled in a sneer. "You brought company, officer?" His voice was low, venomous. Clara didn't answer. Ash shifted slightly, muscles tensing like a bow drawn taut. Luca advanced faster than expected, momentum betrayed by the icy ground beneath his feet. His boot slipped, a sudden falter that sent him sprawling, arms flailing to catch balance, but finding only cold earth. The moment shattered. Ash was upon him, not to tear, but to hold, a firm weight pressing down, grounding the chaos. Luca's struggle was brief, frustration thick in the cold air. Then Elias was there, a shadow at Ash's side, hands moving with quiet precision. Without a word, he pinned Luca's arms, disarming the threat with calm efficiency. Clara watched, breath shallow, as the man who had only ever been a quiet presence now revealed the depth beneath his silence. There was no need for loud declarations or heroic poses, only the clarity of action, honed by years, where every movement mattered. When Luca finally lay still, the threat contained without spectacle, Elias stepped back. The snow continued to fall, soft and relentless, washing over footprints and tension alike. Later, in the dim warmth of a nearby cafe, Clara sat opposite Elias. The silence between them was comfortable, woven from the shared understanding of battles fought in different arenas. He spoke then, not boastful but matter-of-fact. "I was a SEAL," he said, voice low. "Saw things that left marks no one else could see. Dogs like Ash, they saved lives. They taught me about loyalty when the world turned its back." Clara listened, feeling the weight of his words settle alongside her own stories of judgment, isolation, and quiet endurance. The pasts they carried were different, but the scars similar. Outside, the town stirred, whispers shifting tone. Witnesses who had once looked away found courage in the clarity of that frozen moment. Luca's arrest came without fanfare, inevitable and just. The weight of his name no longer commanded fear, but resignation. Ash was cleared, his place beside Clara reaffirmed with nods instead of words. The town's judgment softened, replaced by tentative respect. It was a victory not shouted, but earned in silence and small acts of grace. Morning light filtered through the frost on Clara's window as she prepared for the day. Ash waited patiently, tail low but wagging, a silent promise kept. Elias joined them, 2 steaming cups in hand, a quiet offering of warmth in a world still recovering from cold. They walked together, footsteps muffled by fresh snow. No words were exchanged about what had passed or what might come. Instead, there was presence, steady, unspoken, a slow-burning connection forged in shared quiet. The path stretched before them, unmarked and open, a space to fill not with promises, but with the patient unfolding of trust. Sometimes, Clara thought, the most profound stories are those told not in grand gestures, but in the simple act of walking side by side through the winter's hush. If this story has lingered in your heart, if it has warmed a corner of your soul, then perhaps you understand why we share these whispered tales, stories that move softly, like paw prints in the snow, leaving marks that endure long after the footsteps fade. Stay with us. Subscribe to Whispered Tales, and walk beside us through stories that echo the quiet strength of loyalty, resilience, and the small acts of grace that change everything.